I'm Richard Taylor and I'm here at Shire Hall in Cambridge for the first meeting of the Overview and Scrutiny Committee for the Cambridgeshire and Peterborough Combined Authority. Now that's the body which is chaired by the new Mayor of Cambridgeshire and Peterborough, James Palmer. I've come along today because, according to the forward plan for the Combined Authority, an underground system for Cambridge and light rail for Cambridge are things which should be getting decided on this week. However, having looked at the papers for today's Scrutiny Committee, which are the same papers as will go to the Combined Authority itself later in the week, there's no mention of the underground and light rail. So I'd like to find out some more about that omission. As well, of course, as just come along and observe how power is now being used in Cambridge. Now we've got this devolved body, and we've got the Combined Authority, and we've got the Mayor.
All right, so we're going to make a start. It's 2 o'clock. Just to let the members and members of the public aware that there is a recording device on the table that's been agreed with the acting chairman. If everyone's all right with that, to go ahead with the meeting. So we'll move on to the first item, which is apologies. We've received apologies from Councillor Buckton, and he's being substituted by David Mason for today. Thank you very much. Item 2, declarations of interest. Does anyone have anything? Okay. Then we will move on to item 3, which is the appointment of the chair and the vice chair. So can I take any nominations for chair?
I'd like to nominate Councillor Batchelor.
And do we have a seconder?
I'd be happy to second.
Any other nominations?
I'd like to nominate myself.
And do we have a seconder? Any other nominations? Okay, we can go for a vote for Councillor Batchelor then. Those in
I don't
favour?
believe we do.
We haven't got a second, have we?
Sorry?
We don't need to have a
So
vote.
we don't need to
No?
have, we only have one candidate.
Okay, happy to go with Councillor Batchelor for the chair.
And what happens if we vote him down?
We can go for Rob.
We've got another.
That's fine.
Ed.
Well, mate.
Okay, well done for getting
Does that mean that my nomination is still open at the moment, unless somebody seconds it?
We can do it again if you want.
No,
So
no.
we've got a nomination for...
I don't believe we can do that again, and I think the declaration has been made as to the chair.
Okay, so Chairman, Councillor Batchelor.
Thank you. Okay, the next item is nominations for vice chair.
I'd like to nominate Terry Haywood.
Thank you. Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Yeah. Review it.
Is there any councillor from Peterborough who'd like to be nominated? Anything about education? No? Can I put myself forward?
Sorry?
Can I put myself forward? Can we have you serve?
Yes, yes, by all means.
We can't have a Conservative chair.
Can I serve as vice chair?
Well, no, I understand you can't actually.
No, that's...
No, well, because they, neither the chair nor the vice chair, as I understand it, can be the same party as the mayor.
Well, even if the vice chair can, he can't then officiate at the meeting, so we'll have to ask one.
Perhaps I can ask the monitoring officer to confirm.
Yes, thank you. The chair did ask me for some advice earlier, and the advice I gave that as well, whilst I think, and I will produce a proper briefing note on this, but whilst I think there's no strict rule which says that you can't nominate from the same party as the mayor for the vice chair position, the position is not so clear, you will see in the regs, as it is for the chair. Nonetheless, as Councillor Riley has pointed out, when the chair is not here, which means that the vice chair then has to officiate for the chair, and then that vice chair will be from the same party as the mayor. So it is perhaps better, for practical reasons as much as anything else, that we nominate an opposition member for both chair and vice chair.
Thank you. So, any more nominations?
I will nominate myself again.
Yes.
Can I second
Yes.
Sorry, I wasn't there earlier on.
You're not the only one who's
But we didn't have a whip on.
Right. So, any more nominations for vice chair? No. So we have.
We have a nomination for Councillor Hayward and
Councillor
Councillor Aiden.
Right. We take a vote then on Councillor Hayward. All those in favour? We've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And all those in favour of Councillor Bagent? Okay, so Councillor Hayward is duly elected. And if you like to come and sit on my left hand, you can do some work.
I can sit here and do it, and I know
If
you
wouldn't
want to
mind.
move. Okay. Do you want to
Well, no, I think what we'd like you to.
No, I'm quite happy here.
Well, that's not, because I want you to take people's names for speaking,
Right,
if you don't mind.
I don't know.
Thank you very much.
You're the boss.
Okay, minutes of the previous meeting, which was the 11th of April, a long time ago, and much water has gone under the bridge since then. So can we just check them for accuracy first? Anything on the first page?
Sorry, it is an inaccuracy. I'm down as attending, and unless my doppelganger was here, I hate to make good decisions. I wasn't.
All right, okay, done that one. Page 2. Page 2, no. Page 3. All happy with that then? We've got that. We don't know if we have matters in writing, do we? We don't, do we? No? Okay, good. So that's complete. Next we go on to interview the Mayor. Thank you very much for being with us this afternoon.
Thank you, Chair.
Congratulations on your victory. And we look forward to an interesting afternoon. I understand you have to be away by 3.
Well, I did have to be away by 3, but if you're desperate to talk to me for even longer, my next meeting is now in this building as well, so I actually have until 4. But I'm sure you'll be, I'm sure you'll be bored of me before then.
Okay, well, what we were intending to do was to ask you questions around your sort of 100 days programme. I don't know if you wanted to make a brief introduction about
Well, I mean, I'll just say, obviously, I'm sorry that Martin isn't here this time, and we will endeavour to make sure that he can be in future. But as you would expect, he's working feverishly on the 100-day plan and other aspects, of course, as well. A brief introduction. Well, those of you I haven't met, and I think there are one or two around the table I haven't. Hello, I'm James Palmer, and the public very kindly elected me, as you all know, on the 4th of May, and I had some stiff opposition, very stiff from Rod, who worked tirelessly to win the campaign, and unfortunately for him, didn't quite make it, and my sympathies lie with him and the other candidates, because it was a long and hard campaign, and we all put a lot of effort into getting that victory. So, very fortunate, absolutely delighted to be in this position. Not something I ever foresaw myself in, a position I ever foresaw myself in, not least because, of course, there was no such thing as elected mayor to aspire to not so many years ago. I campaigned very heavily on infrastructure for Cambridgeshire and Peterborough, and linking the north and the south, and raising the levels of people's aspirations, and creating a fairer Cambridgeshire. And my first 100-day commitments, I believe, reflects this. It's an ambitious plan, and that doesn't frighten me at all. We are so far behind in infrastructure in Cambridgeshire and Peterborough that we have to be ambitious, I believe, and have to look at the assets that we have in this magnificent part of the world and what we could actually achieve were we to spread those assets beyond their current current geographical area. Of course, I don't have to tell you guys about how successful and wonderful a place Cambridgeshire and Peterborough is to live, and we have in Peterborough one of the fastest growing and strongest cities in the UK. In Finland, I believe 37% of all the vegetables eaten in the UK are grown in Finland, and of course the south of the county is the world leader in life science and technology. every part of our county feeds into the success story in its own different way. But of course in the south, because of the incredible success of the Cambridge phenomenon, and because we are so very close to London, it's very, very expensive to live and debilitating to those people who are young and want to get on the housing ladder. The lack of housing is a severe problem, and it affects people's daily lives. We are not, across the county of Cambridgeshire, a high-paid county, and yet we suffer from, particularly in the south, very high cost of living as well as very high house prices. The traditional thing in this country has been to build houses and put in infrastructure afterwards. Certainly when I was first elected as a local council, district councillor 10 years ago, the thinking then was that developers will put in all the infrastructure when they build houses. That thinking clearly is flawed, and we have not been able to provide either A, the infrastructure necessary, or B, the houses necessary to enable our economy to grow in a fair way. So we have to find a solution. It's absolutely clear that the current system, relying entirely on the market, is not providing the housing necessary, and it's not spreading the wealth across the whole county. So with that in mind, my first 100-day commitment, as I mentioned, is heavy on infrastructure, but it also is very strong in the area that I campaigned heavily on, which is to bring up the level of education and apprenticeships in the county and invest heavily into putting young people into the workplace and not relying entirely on university. And mentioning university, of course, some of our first spending will be, I believe, agreed on Wednesday, and that will be to fund the long-awaited Peterborough University, something that I'm absolutely committed to. Again, raising the level. There is a dead spot further education-wise in Peterborough, and I know, although you can get a degree in Peterborough at the moment, it's not the same as having a dedicated university based in the city for people to attend who perhaps can't afford to travel to university, but giving people an opportunity that isn't currently there. So it's a wide-ranging commitment. It is an ambitious commitment, but it's one I'm very proud of, and I will be working tirelessly to make sure that we get these schemes up and running. And of course, I'm open to questions.
Thank you very much. If we could open with Councillor Bajans, I believe you've got a housing list.
Yes, certainly. I was wondering if you, in fact, have any idea where you're going to set up your housing schemes. Have you decided you're halfway through your 100 days?
Okay.
And the first wave of new affordable housing, where you plan to do that? And one other point that I'd like to make is, would it be possible at this stage, bearing in mind recent events, to ensure that all the houses that are built under the scheme contain sprinklers?
Well, I'm not going to comment on sprinklers because I don't know the necessity of sprinklers in two-storey houses. I don't think that we'll be building tower blocks in this scheme, and I'm not sure as to the legal requirements or the studies that have been done nationwide on sprinklers in houses.
Well, the Chief Fire Officers Association has made a recommendation that all houses several years ago should contain sprinklers.
Okay, well that's something that we can look into, but you wouldn't expect me to commit to that without having the detailed knowledge in front of me, or to not to go against it either way. I would say that we will look at the evidence before us and we will put in the best quality housing that we possibly can, and if that includes sprinklers, then so be it. I'm not going to say no, clearly. You will have seen we have released our first tranche of affordable houses. It's not as many as I would hope would be in the first tranche, but it's a start. I think it allows sort of a very small amount, 20 or so in each area, which is a beginning but not where we want to be. Our second tranche will be much more ambitious, and we will be putting affordable houses across the county.
I think it also asked if you identified sites ongoing.
Well, there are. I mean,
I understand this is sensitive.
Yeah, clearly, we haven't identified, if you want to say, any new sites as yet. We're working within the parameters of the local plans that we have, but there clearly will be new sites that are identified. But what I've said all the way along, and I still hold firmly to, that any new towns in Cambridgeshire and Peterborough will not be built where there is not current railway or future plans for railway access.
Yeah, have you, within the terms of that, thought about whether they will be central to the areas that really need the houses, where people are commuting to, such as Cambridge City, or whether you're looking to put them out to other areas?
Well, as I've said before, I believe strongly that we need to put infrastructure in before the massive amount of houses that we need can be built, which clearly means that areas that are currently not necessarily areas that you could commute from would be if the infrastructure was put in for them. So if I use an example of Fenland, clearly it's not really possible to commute from Fenland into Cambridge at the moment, yet the distances are very minor. You're in March is 25 miles away from Cambridge, Whittlesea is only 35 minutes on the train. It's now getting more rolling stock on and getting more trains running and later trains running as well. So the traditional feeling of, well, you can't build in Fenland because it's not well connected, I've got to turn that around, because we can't clearly build the number of houses necessary or the ones that are truly affordable if we just build in the hotspots in the south of the county. So it is about getting that infrastructure sorted out before the housing comes on.
So that's your chicken and your egg. You're getting the infrastructure in place first before you plan to where you're going to build your houses.
Well, no, I would hope that we do them concurrently. If you put the infrastructure plans in, you also put the housing plans around that infrastructure. So it is joined up thinking. But it's also a numbers game. Simply, the government have requested the Mayor to build 100,000 new homes. There is absolutely no way the Mayor will be able to build 100,000 new homes in Cambridgeshire and Peterborough without improvements to the infrastructure.
I think it's a more housing question.
Yeah,
Councillor Ewell.
it's primarily about the Wisbech Garden Town and the support that you're giving that. If you can give us a flavour of that, please.
Yeah, well, clearly there's been some work done already on Wisbech Garden Town, and we've decided to see if we can get some better predictions. The latest one is for 12,000 new homes in Wisbech. The work I've seen before didn't include any work on the A47, which is clearly a completely or almost completely unusable road because it's so utterly appalling. And you will have heard me say that I would love to see the A47 extended dual carriageway not just to Wisbech but out to Norwich. It seems to me completely insane that the two largest cities in Cambridgeshire are not linked by a decent road. But also, yes, Wisbech Rail is key. I've already had meetings, or a meeting in Stratford with Network Rail, who want to see, gave their blessing and their agreement to a Wisbech Rail station and extension to the line, but of course it must be linked in so that people can jump on the train in Wisbech and come straight through to Cambridge. So there's work to be done clearly, but 12,000 homes of growth of the city, of the town of Wisbech is something that I'm very keen on. It's already a successful place to do business. 11 of the top 100 businesses in Cambridgeshire are based in Wisbech, so it's not a basket case. It's somewhere else clearly that just has lacked investment in the past, and I'm very keen to see that investment come forward.
Thanks for that. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Murphy, I'll leave you on housing as well.
Yeah, I've got some questions. I'll do the housing ones first. Last time I saw you, you were flaunting the regulations in Peterborough. Hopefully, that was an error. And
well, I'm sure, Ed,
anyway,
that we can let that be going.
I'll ask you some questions on housing. I'm wondering what your thoughts are on a few issues. The type of housing that we need in Cambridgeshire and Peterborough. These ones, I think we've got to keep them open because we don't know what's going on with the government papers, etc. On the next bit, tenure. Are they going to be secure tenancies built for councils, or are they going to be something else? Obviously, that one could vary upon the right to buy. If housing associations get pushed into having to sell, might be a good thing, might be a bad thing. I don't know. What are your thoughts on that? And the ownership of, as I said, whether it's going to be owned by councils. I know there's organisations have been set up now in Cambridgeshire, and I know South Towns have got a particularly good track record of building dwellings, and I think what's happened on the A14. So there's tenure, the size, the right to buy, obviously the levels of rent. And I see in the plans for the combined authority they're better as far as social housing goes.
Let's have no answer. I think we've got quite a few questions.
I think they're hitting up to about 40%. Do you think you'd be able to exceed that in social housing or not?
Okay. Quite a lot of questions, all in one. First of all, there's not going to be a one-size-fits-all policy here. You know, the vast amount of houses needed across the county means that we've got to have many different ways of bringing them forward. Housing associations will be one of those, clearly. I think there's potential for councils to build their own as well. You will have seen me talk at length about community land trusts and how they can be part of the scheme. Now, when it comes to buying council houses, if you are in a council house, then you have got the right to buy. That's government policy. But in community land trusts, you do not have the right to buy. So if we bring forward community land trusts, then they are exempt from right to buy. And that's one way of circumnavigating an issue. But I believe that right to buy is also a fair and a good policy as well. So I think that the answer to your question is we will look at every possible way of bringing forward the number of houses necessary. Now, the reason I mentioned community land trust is it's something that I helped bring through at East Cambs, and we're very proud of the high quality of housing. And I definitely 100% believe that affordability and quality should not be mutually exclusive, but they should be one and the same. And we also have to look at the ability to provide, as you said, what percentage can you bring forward. Now, traditionally, and as I've got some knowledge in this because of being a council leader, if you put a policy of 50% flat across the board in Cambridgeshire, you will not hit it, because there are parts of the county where land value is very high, where you could hit 50% in and around the Cambridge area, for example. But I know to my cost that setting 40% in East Cambs meant that we just didn't build any houses at all, and we were heavily criticised. I think one year we only provided 7 affordable homes over the course of the year, and the problem was because that level was set too high, it was stopping developers coming in. There's a number of ways to look at what can be achieved, and I mentioned earlier that relying solely on the market is not a way that we can deliver. And again, I'll go back to trust. What did trust do? Well, we built on land outside the planning area, which was agricultural price. The landowner that worked alongside us on our first scheme in Streatham, they ended up about 10 times agricultural price rather than 50 times. The uplift in the value of land goes into building the houses. And that's got me to thinking of how could you accelerate that? And I've already written to government and requested them to look at the possibility of a land cap in Cambridgeshire, especially on those corridors where we're building infrastructure. If the land could be capped at 10 times agricultural price, then our ability to build high quality social housing as well as market housing increases, because we have more control. Because once that land sells for 50 times agricultural price, or in this area 100 times, that money is dead to the economy, and it's very alive to those landowners who are fortunate enough to be in that position, but it's dead to the economy. And it's about trying to do things in a different way. So I hope that I've sort of hit every area.
Thank you very much. You're not going to be in a straitjacket, you're going to be practical. I meant to say that we've got some areas like Castor where the infrastructure's there already,
yes,
and brownfield,
yeah.
So we don't need to build the infrastructure.
I totally agree, and wherever we can utilise infrastructure, the Nene Valley Rail, etc., or the A1, or whatever it may be, rail elsewhere in the county, the new Oxford-Cambridge line, wherever we can utilise where that rail is, it makes absolute common sense to put new towns or new development alongside the rail, rather than, you know, we learn by our mistakes, don't we? And putting new towns in without a rail link causes problems, and you have to go back and visit that again in the future. Right. So Castor is a good example.
I think I've got 2 more on housing. Is yours housing?
Not housing, sorry.
One more on housing then.
There's been a big headline recently: Cambridge builds cut price housing to lure academics. And they're talking about, as I read it here, 1,500 homes plus accommodation for 8,500 people. How is that affecting your planning? And is it, in fact, are you interlocking the two plans? But it does seem that
I think that's the university site on the western campus. Now, clearly, the market doesn't work to the same parameters as the university, nor does it has the capital, etc., or the land necessary to deliver those things. But clearly, those numbers are within our housing numbers. I think, going back to what I said to Ed, it's about trying to hit from as many angles as possible. And if there are ways that we can bring forward high quality housing, utilising the university, for example, then we should do so. As I said, we must not be a one-size-fits-all policy.
So they will be part of your plan, as it were?
Well, I mean, those I'd say part of my plan. Those numbers will be part of, I believe that's in South Cambridgeshire, so they will be part of South Cambridgeshire's numbers. The numbers I've been given are over and above the ones that are in the current local plan. So, but of course, obviously, I'll be working alongside each of your districts and city councils to make sure that we have a joined up thinking on this.
Thank you.
Principal, I think, Councillor.
Sorry, one more?
Can I just ask one more?
It's very quick.
This is very quick. It's just to follow up on that point about working with the district councils. I'm aware that Uttlesford District Council, which is not part of our area, are reviewing their local plan, having some debate about where they should put their new housing. I think you're absolutely right that it should be near railways. I think that's spot on. Are you also talking to them?
Of course, you would expect me to do so. I've already had a chat with the leader of Uttlesford District Council, as well as the leader of Suffolk County Council and Forest Heath, which is now going to be called West Suffolk, because not just Uttlesford, of course, but there are... Cambridgeshire is not an island, we all know that, and growth in Cambridgeshire is lending itself to those other areas. So Haverhill clearly is a key growth area. You know about that, Lucy, from and Mildenhall is a potential growth area for this county as well. So linking those in, my light rail proposal links in those places, and potentially Uttlesford. There's some border work that could be done there.
Right, Councillor Kendall, is it transport?
Transport, yeah. I would like to ask a question in relation to the feasibility studies for light rail and underground and the extension of the M11 to the A47. Firstly, if you could just give us some more granularity in terms of the status of the feasibility study and what the criteria is and the timing. And then secondly, how that will relate to the work being undertaken by the Greater Cambridge Partnership, as it's now called, was the Greater Cambridge City Deal. And then in relation to that, a broader question, which was your ongoing relationship with the Greater Cambridge Partnership, and do you see that in a formal way or an informal way, and how that plays into their plans and your plans?
Okay. Well, I'll take the M11 first, and then we'll go on to the M11 business case. Will be brought forward in the paper on Wednesday, along with the A10, the A47. I'm a great believer in opening up the heart of Cambridgeshire to business, and also linking Peterborough and Cambridge more effectively. I believe that through growth and through the potential land cap that I just mentioned, I think there's a clear business case for the growth that could be formed along that corridor. We only have to look at the success of the M11 corridor that's below Cambridge to see what could be achieved if we put it further up. And of course, originally the M11 was supposed to go up to the Humber Bridge. I'm not suggesting we do that in the next fortnight, but I do believe we need to know a business case, Rod, because it's one thing having my belief and another having a business case that backs it up. So that's something that we will get on with. I have been in discussions already and spoken to a conference last week, the M11 Stansted Cambridge London corridor, and also offered my support for a second runway at Stansted, because I believe if this county is going to be a true competitor to Silicon Valley, we need an international airport of the level necessary. So that's the M11. I hope that's okay. City deal, feasibility study for light rail and underground. The feasibility study for light rail and underground again is going through the initial parts of it. We've begun already, but there's some extra T's to cross and I's to dot in that we look at not just the light rail option, but other rapid transport options as well. The feasibility study should be completed by Christmas, and that will actually go through the July meeting, this combined authority. It will be in the papers for Wednesday, but it will go through to the July meeting of the authority, where it will be fully considered. And the reason it's going through the July meeting is, and this goes on to your other part of your question, is because we are doing it in conjunction with the city deal, working together. I do not see my role as a dominant one over the city deal, more as an observer and a work partner. I've already sat down and spoke with the city deal in a private meeting, and we had a very convivial meeting, and we agreed on almost everything, and I believe that we can work together for the mutual benefit of each other, and of course mainly for the people of Cambridgeshire. But the city deal have a remit, and as you will know, it's a localised one, and my need is to provide a transport solution for the whole of Cambridgeshire and Peterborough. So where we can work together, we certainly will. There is no point us funding or funding separate ideas and schemes without working together. So we will be working together, and I'm sure that relationship will improve and strengthen.
Can I just have one quick follow-up? Could I ask the Mayor if you could comment on how that feasibility study will play with the existing plans that the city deal have for the bus roads?
Yeah, well, the busway to Cambourne, I think, is a problem. And I've told the city deal this, and you will have also noticed that I've mentioned this in public as well. And the reason why the busway is a problem is twofold in my opinion. It only goes to Cambourne, so it doesn't do what's necessary. It misses St Neots out completely. It doesn't allow for future growth. It's short-termist. And it is, I think, being rushed through to coincide with the local plan for South Cambs. And this is one of the problems with government, local government, short-term thinking, in that putting forward the wrong scheme just to allow South Cambs a local plan to be passed, I think is a problem, and there's something we need to sort out. We have to have a long-term vision for Cambridgeshire and Peterborough, and short-term thinking will not help us here. Clearly the busway is controversial, and as any scheme seems to be around Cambridge as far as I can see, but the busway is a controversial scheme, and as I said, it will be a very expensive, very short-term solution, and I think we need to do better.
Thank you very much. Councillor Riley.
Thank you. Could I, before I ask my question, I'd just like to challenge a statement you made now. You said that in areas around Cambridge, 50% affordable housing is entirely realistic. Those of us that live vaguely near Cambridge would say that that is totally unrealistic. And actually we get beaten down to 20%. So if you think you can get away with 50%, then I will be very happy to see you try. But my real question concerns a reality check. I believe that the budget for the entire Mayor's office is some 20 million, apart from affordable housing. I know this isn't on, but I'm not going to get a chart. There's not going to be a section for general, is there? So, but if I look at half a dozen of your bullet points, I have overspent your budget by 2 orders of magnitude. Business case for during of the A47 and upgrading the A10. I'm not saying these are not very important projects. Feasibility study for light rail and underground for Cambridge, extension of the M11 to the A47, rail line from Wisbech, you've mentioned already, phase and funding for the University of Peterborough. I mean, how many noughts at the end of that figure? Has this thing been actually remotely costed?
Mm-hmm. Well, you're right that we get £20 million a year for 30 years, and you're also right that you can't possibly build the schemes out that we're putting forward for that money. But this is also the beginning of the combined authority. I do not expect, and never have expected, that these schemes will be paid for out of the £600 million that government have put forward for this authority, plus of course the £170 million for housing, as you're aware. But what I can't do is go to the private market or the government without clear business plans of what could be achieved here. Now, I've already, in the very short time I've been there, been approached by, as you would expect, in a heavy growth and very successful part of the country, I've been approached by a number, and when I say a number, I would say over 10 investment companies that want to invest in infrastructure in Cambridgeshire and Peterborough. I've also spoken to government. Now, as we know, there are limited funds, but government have put forward £23 billion for infrastructure in the UK for this section of Parliament. Now, if I can put together a business case which is clear and incontrovertible, that I can attract business investment for, and then go to government and say what we could achieve financially in this part of the world, which is extraordinary. Remember that we pay 5 billion or so currently in, and that's predicted to grow. Then we have got a clear business case. And I've said before that if Cambridgeshire and Peterborough were a PLC, and I was to go to the bank and I'm asked to borrow £8 billion to improve infrastructure in Cambridgeshire and Peterborough, it would be very, very easy to raise that money with the current figures we have. Now, I will not go to government and ask for all the money necessary to improve what we have, but I will put together business cases that aid me in getting the finances through that's necessary and to grow through. Now, when it comes to Peterborough University, the total cost for Peterborough University is in the region of £60 million over, I think it's a 20-year period, Kim? Yeah, in total. But that's not literally just gifting the money. There's a business case for Peterborough University. It is about raising money and getting money in from other areas, etc. And that's the job of the mayor, is to be able to go out to the market and get funding in for certain things. So it's not just cash straight out of the door, but I have to get these business cases before me. I've been too long in local government to know, or long enough in local government to know that unless you have a solid, absolutely watertight business case done at a very high level, you will fail in all of your desires. And it's absolutely key to me that I have not just the solid business case behind me for each of these pieces of infrastructure, but also the examples of how they can bring forward the growth in the county to extend the amount of money we pay into the Exchequer per year.
Okay, I just hope you're not going to bankrupt the whole region by taking PFI money.
No, I think we've seen PFI before, and as always, you try and learn from the mistakes of the past.
Thank you. Councillor Carter, this is transport, isn't it?
It is indeed. Thank you, Chairman. James, two areas in your transport and infrastructure 100-day commitments that interest to myself in particular for Huntingdonshire and the impact. The first one is obviously Network Rail. There seems to be a perceived need to improve the rail network between Huntingdon and Peterborough to put in the fourth rail, and also a need for a station at Alconbury to cater for the development that's ongoing there. Neither of those seem to appear in the local transport infrastructure plan that's on your agenda for Wednesday. And equally surprising, I see nothing in here about the A1, which obviously is a major route north-south, and yet seems to be ignored, or am I missing something? So again, that doesn't show up in the infrastructure plan either.
No, you're right, neither of those are in the infrastructure plan for now, but that doesn't mean to say that I can't bring them forward in the future, and I've already spoken with Jonathan Ginoli, particularly about the A1 improvements, and we will be working together to come up with some kind of business plan for that. But I didn't feel it's something I could achieve in the first 100 days, but it doesn't mean to say it's not something I will look to achieve, and it won't look to achieve in the future. Alconbury Station has been a long-term ambition, I know, and I have been and spoken to Irvine and Civic. There are talks ongoing with that. The schemes that are in the first 100-day plans are schemes that I feel can bring forward major housing growth. Alconbury Station brings it into that the potential is to build more houses on Alconbury. As you know, 6,000 I don't believe is enough. I also have concerns about the rate that Urban and Civic build, which is a worry considering they're also in control of one of our other major sites, which is Waterbeach. And I think there needs to be more discussions of Urban and Civic before I put forward the potential of any public funds into an Alconbury station at this time. So I'm not saying it's not in my mind, it clearly is. Improvements to the A1 are also there, but they're not in the first 100-day plan for those reasons.
Councillor Hayward?
Can I ask a follow-up on the A1? As you know, you probably know, the A1, the next statement on that is going to be made by this December, and Highways England are looking at it very closely now. They are also looking at the possibility of not just doing the whole road from the M25 all the way up to the Black Cat, or sorry, beyond the Black Cat to Bampton, but they're looking at short, not necessarily short term, but local schemes. And unless we can get in a very strong argument for at least one of those local schemes, and I could mention 2 or 3, then we may miss the boat. And what I would ask is that if you can't put the A1 into this first 100 days, which I realise is going to disappear in the middle of August, it should be in the first week of your next 100 days. But if it isn't, we may miss the boat. And I think that would be terrible, because the A1, it's all very well for you to talk about housing here and housing there. It is the most important commercial route in the county. It was unfortunately missed out totally in the Cambridgeshire trial. Heaven knows why, but it was missed out. Nor does it appear in Peterborough. And your plan at the moment, which you're going to be discussing on Wednesday, is based on those 2. So it doesn't include the A1 at all. So I would ask you, please put the A1 in.
Okay.
And I would like your guarantee that it's going to be.
Okay, well...
Is this starting to sound a bit like personal pleading?
Well, it may be, but you know, it's important to the area.
So look, the A1, you know, what you've said, I'm fully aware of the situation with the A1. As I said, Jonathan Ginoli has been lobbying me, as you would expect, as has Charlie Schwartz as well. So, you know, I hear what's going on. I've got a scheduled meeting with Chris Grading where clearly I'm going to mention these schemes that need to be sorted out.
Can I ask a little bit on the railway as well? We have a major problem, as you know. They were going to, I was hoping this might come up in your plan, they were going to get all the level crossings between King's Cross and way up north. That hasn't happened at the moment. Are you going to be looking upon it in one of your plans to look at that as well? Because it is a big problem and it will affect your interconnection, as it were, between these new houses you want to build. Because we have 1 or 2 level crossings which are very important and very vital, and at the moment are just snarling up.
Okay, I hadn't considered that, but clearly it's something that's very valid, and I will bring that up as well.
Thank you.
Okay.
Councillor Hewlett, were you on transport?
No, I was on a general question about...
Okay.
Yeah.
Let's change the subject.
Yeah. Some of it has been talked about already. It's day 50 of your first 100 days, an ambitious plan. You said yourself it was an ambitious plan going forward. Can you tell us what you've actually set in motion and is up and running? Have you been able to raise any funding so far?
No, because as I've said before, until I've got significant and well-costed business plans and feasibility studies, I would be asking certain people to invest in something they had no idea how much it was going to cost. So it is, I'm afraid, you know, the bottom line is we are starting from year zero. These schemes many of them have never been costed. There are some, the A10 for example, we can borrow some of the work that's been done already, but you know, we are starting from scratch. So I can't give you any assurances that I've secured funding for any of these schemes, but bear with me, Fred, and I will in the future.
Yeah. Is there anything in your plan you've put forward that you would either have added or taken away? Is there, when you've looked back at it?
There's nothing in there I would take away. Obviously, there are things that I would have loved to have put in for, you know, the A1 that's just been mentioned, Alconbury Station, I would love, you know, but I have to be realistic about what I felt that could be achieved in the first 100 days of getting these things up and running. So I don't think that clearly this isn't going to be the end of, even if these were all achieved, and God willing that would be wonderful, but even if they were, I don't think any of us around this table think that means, oh, job done then, we'll walk away.
No.
Clearly infrastructure needs consistent looking at and improving, and we will continue to do that.
So this will be subject to a regular review.
Absolutely,
Advice
and I'm sure that this committee will be very much part of that.
Yeah, I think we perhaps look forward to an overview on that going
And
forward.
the whole point, you know, the overview part of this committee, I think, is absolutely vital, because you can give me heads up, perhaps in areas that I've missed. Because, you know, with all the best will in the world, I don't think I'm perfect.
Absolutely. Just a quick
Not
one
quite.
on money. You're 20 million a year for 30 years. 30 years is an awful long time in politics. Do you actually have any guarantee of that money over that period of time?
Look, 30 years' time I'll be 77, and I hope to goodness that I'm not sitting around here being questioned on 20 million a year then, and I doubt very much the public will have that much. So, look, the advice that we had all the way through the combined authority discussions when we were with government were that we could download effectively that 20 million a year, we could borrow against it. That advice I don't think has changed. Clearly the commitment, we have a government in place, it looks solid as a rock to me, so I think it will definitely be there in 5 years. So clearly we've already had £40 million of that money, we've got that in the bank, and I would expect the next 4 payments to come through as you would expect them to. I will continue to lobby government for more, and I will continue to lobby government for more powers for the combined authority, and as you know, there are other combined authorities that have been in existence longer than ours where those powers and money keep coming in the right areas. So the only advice we've been given from central government was that you can download that money, but we haven't set anything in place as yet to do so.
Right. I think it's on your risk list.
Well, it's one of the things, yeah.
Thank you. Yeah. Councillor Mason, was it?
Yeah, just another pleading question, James. It's on transport. You mentioned about Whittlesea to Cambridge, a 35-minute run, which is quite right. I know you've visited Whittlesea as well, and I think you described Whittlesea Station as the station that time forgot. Well, unfortunately, trains forget that Whittlesea Station is there as well. They only stop every 2 hours. Yeah. Do you have any influence on actually increasing the stoppage time? I know there's plans for extending the facilities eventually. Yeah.
But well, early days, as you know, yeah. I've already mentioned Whittlesea Station to Network Rail. Clearly, as much of the network in Cambridgeshire does, it relies on improvements at Ely North Junction. When we improve Ely North Junction, we can not only increase the amount of rolling stock that goes to Whittlesea, and of course therefore March and Maney, and absolutely up to Wisbeach as well, but we can also increase the amount of trains that stop at Cambridge North. So it's a vital cog, it's a vital piece of infrastructure that needs to be sorted out. When it comes to Whittlesea, as you say, a train every 2 hours, or whether you want one or not. And I think the last train is at 6 o'clock in the evening, which is just mind.
That's the impact's been important,
yeah,
obviously.
It's incredible that, you know, obviously if you put trains forward every half an hour or less from Cambridge to Whittlesea, the prices, house prices in Whittlesea would go up, but it would give people the option to live where houses are more affordable. And that's what I want to say.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Chair, well, I just wanted to follow up on the question that you had, Chair, which was, if I'm correct, James, what I see in terms of the budget is there is a rephasing, particularly in relation to the housing funding that's coming through. Could you just comment on that? Because it looks increasingly as some of that is now being pushed back into later years. So is that a concern for you, that our ability to deliver on these projects could be impeded by the government's decision not to give us the cash on the original timeframe that they were contemplating?
I haven't got any concerns at the moment, Rod, that we won't get the money when we need it. I've been given full assurance by the Secretary of State that government are 100% committed to this combined authority deal, and I don't have any concerns at this time that that's going to change. So at the moment we're in very early stages, and I believe that as we develop our housing plan through the next 6 months to 12 months, I believe that when we need to get the money in that we want as we need it, I believe that government will support us on that.
Thank you. Councillor Bailey?
Yeah, thank you. I'd like to ask a bit about apprenticeships, or suggest something maybe for apprenticeships. I'm wondering if, as this is going to be or is already an area of high development from industrial manual trades for building houses, building roads, but whether you would consider actually setting an apprenticeship school up for those particular trades, rather than just opening it up to all apprentices, but to try and create a new market for people to come here to learn trades which can be put into operation as part of the sandwich course.
Yeah, well, as you will have seen from my campaign and my first 100 days, apprenticeships are absolutely key to what I want to achieve here. I believe very strongly that we've failed young people in this country by letting apprenticeship schemes slip over the last 20, 30 years or more. And I think that we've felt the pain of that, and we are feeling the pain of that now. When it comes to trades, as you mentioned, there are exceptional colleges that already offer training for trades in Cambridgeshire. I visited the one in Huntington, which was amazing, I felt, but where your point raises, where you raise a very valid point, for example, that the apprenticeships for scaffolders, there's a 3-year waiting list, which tells me one thing: we're not training enough scaffolders. So I think that potentially the best way is not necessarily to reinvent the wheel, but create apprenticeship hubs for certain areas. And it could be trades, but we've got some good work going on at Peterborough Regional College already, CRC, exceptional work going on there. But it could be science. Apprenticeships can be at any level. You know, I've seen apprentices in engineering, I've seen apprentices in high-level technology at Zeiss in Cambridge. You know, they can be from any level, and nobody should be taken out of the opportunity to go for apprenticeships. So I want to see more investment in apprenticeships. I don't think that we currently put enough in, and I'm very keen to discuss with government when first of all, I've got to ask questions you'd expect, but the retention of business rates for Cambridgeshire and Peterborough was originally supposed to come online in 2020. Clearly we've got a new government, so I wonder if the timeframes have changed. I would like to bring that forward if possible, but I'm also not ruling out the potential of an apprenticeship levy on business rates. And I think that's something that business would accept, and the reason why I believe that, I'll give you an example. You will all know that adult social care you were able to get adult social care as a separate line on council tax. And when it was a separate line, people understood exactly where their money was going, and I felt that was something that people understood. I think if on business rates you had a separate line that was for investment in apprenticeships, I think businesses would understand entirely where that money was going, and that they would obviously know that they would reap the benefit as well. One thing that's absolutely clear post-Brexit is we have to create a skilled workforce in Cambridgeshire that will service the jobs that are going to come forward, many of which, as you mentioned, will be trades because of the numbers of houses we have to build.
Okay, thank you there. I've got 4 more on the list at the moment. If there's anything pressing that anybody who is not on the list, please let me know now, because I will close it. Councillor Over. Okay, Councillor Murphy.
I've got many questions. I know we're running out of time now, so I'll concentrate on transport, and then I want to say a little bit about education. We talked about the bottom line on the council tax bill. There is a line for the mayor. I don't know how much we spent so much in 50 days, probably quite a lot if you do the elections, but maybe we'll reap that. Will there be a charge in the future? On transport, when we were Well, we weren't consulted. In the last minute, the government took transport powers and gave them to the mayor, all right? I think that was wrong not to consult on it, and that's one of the reasons we opposed it in Peterborough. So I think we need to make friends on that one, and you need to convince people that it's right. Do you propose using powers under the bus bill, for example, to sort out the franchise problems we have?
Well,
You can employ your own bus companies. We've got bus cooperatives in Ipswich. If they're just going to run the profitable routes, will you consider using your powers to make sure we have reliable, affordable and safe public transport?
I think
talking buses.
Yeah, I think that what's clear is that the bus system in Cambridgeshire and Peterborough is not providing the right level at the right time of bus travel, bus transport options. It's a difficult one, and Rod and I argued about this a lot in the campaign, because in rural areas people don't tend to use buses a great deal, and do they not use them because they're not there, or are they not there because they don't use them? This is the chicken and egg thing that was mentioned earlier. But I think what's very clear is that we need a review of the bus service in Cambridgeshire and Peterborough. I don't think that the current model is giving us best value for our investment year on year. I worry that buses start too late. I've had complaints, people saying I want to go to work, but the first bus in my village is at 8 o'clock. So should we be rushing? Should we be putting more buses on between 5:30 and 8 in the morning, and 4 and 9 at night, and less buses in the middle of the day when people aren't using them? I don't know the answers to this because I'm not an expert in buses, but there are clear examples of outstanding cities worldwide where buses are very successful. So if I look at Singapore, for example, as an example of what you can do. So my aim is, and this is another thing I've discussed with the city deal, is to work alongside the city deal to have a full review of bus services across Cambridgeshire and Peterborough to bring forward potentially best practice across the area. So I'm not the expert. I will get people in to tell us what the best options are, and that would include potential different franchising options, etc.
To bottom it out, as Devo Mayor, you've got powers to run a bus, a transport company.
Yeah.
Would you do that like they do in Nottingham?
Well, Ed, I'd be a fool to say that. I just told you that I don't know a great deal about buses. So for me to sit here and say, yeah, what I'll do is I'll run a bus service, quite frankly, it's a long while since I've run for a bus, let alone run a bus. So, I mean, let's find out what the review tells us. I think that would be the fairest option.
Did you have any education?
Yeah, sorry to go on, but this is correct.
But you allow one more.
Okay. Potentially you could be getting health, like other metro mayors have got next year. I don't know whether when we get a government they'll probably talk to you about that, perhaps. On education, you mentioned the university, and you might expect most people in Peterborough to be soundly behind the university. I'm aware that we've got a lot of students at the Ruskin, we've got a lot of students at the Open University. Our education in Peterborough is problems and issues or attainment. It's not a university might do something for the bars in town if it's in town, but it won't necessarily show 30% below the achievements in East Anglia. And I know that there are ongoing problems in Cambridgeshire as well. Our students are not getting the results that we would expect them to do, so maybe focusing on the university too much in Peterborough may not be the right thing to do.
I think, look, first of all, I believe in the university in Peterborough because I think it does more. It's more than just education, and I think you alluded to that. Might be good for the bars in Peterborough. Well, that's good for the Peterborough economy. Peterborough nighttime economy is dead, and it's for a city of 195,000 people. The nighttime economy in the centre of Peterborough is pretty poor, and it's a shame. And a university will help that. There's no two ways about that. So it's more than just about the attainment level of the university. But I agree with you on education, that there's more we can do, and I will be working alongside our MPs to lobby government for fairer funding and more funding. But you've also heard me talk about apprenticeships, and I've been very I am committed, and I've been constant in my commitment to investing in schools to bring up the level of apprenticeships that come through schools. And you will know in Peterborough, you've got some schools that are seen as failing schools or struggling schools that are not hitting high levels of 5A to Cs. If we can, this goes back to your colleagues mentioned about trades. It's not just about trades, it's apprenticeships across the board. If we can get recruitment professionals into these schools and get these young people into jobs post 16 or post 18, but going into apprenticeship schemes post 16, and the schools are given league table points or attainment points for getting there, then you perhaps see schools that can say, well, we've got 40% of our kids are getting 5A to Cs, but of the remaining 60%, 80% are going straight into a career. Then all of a sudden parents are going to look at the school and they're going to say, okay, well, that school might not be the one I want to go if my child wants to go to a top university, but if I want my child to have a quality career, that school is doing everything it can. So I'm going to decide to send my child to a school that offers it the chance of a career. And that's a big change in the way that our education is set up at the moment, Ed. It's a massive difference. But I'm a great believer in fairness and opportunity for all, and there's also more than one way to skin a cat. And you don't have to necessarily, and I don't think people shouldn't go to university. Of course they should, if they want to, and if they're going to get a career from it, then absolutely they should go to university, or if they want to see it as a life experience. But they shouldn't be discarded if they don't. And I believe at the moment we're discarding high quality people from our society, and we're not giving them the chance in life that they deserve, and I'm absolutely committed to trying to solve that.
Okay, thank you then. Now I have Nessinger, Hewlett, Carter, Over and Haywood, which is more than enough for
Okay, you've outlined and we've talked about the very, very large number of feasibility studies that you're putting forward and the reason for those. There is clearly a danger in your plan that you spend all the money on feasibility studies and you don't get that investment that comes in, and therefore there's no money left to actually deliver any of these projects. How are you going to avoid that? In terms of the what comes in from private finance, what private finance wants to fund isn't necessarily always the same as what is right for a local area. And how is the combined authority going to balance making sure that the investment that comes in is spent on the thing? It's not just spent on what business wants because they want to build houses in a particular area. As Councillor Murphy touched on, you do have some tax raising powers. Do you have plans to use them in order to make sure that you can fund some of this stuff? And finally, you did mention that you've been talking to government about increased powers. Which particular ones have you been talking to them about? And does any of that relate to the Regional Schools Commissioner and some bizarre DFE decisions on free schools?
Well, firstly, I'll say your last point, no. As yet, I haven't sat down with the Secretary of State for Education, but I am planning to do so. And I've got meetings planned with Secretary of State for Business and Secretary of State for Transport, as you expect, and an ongoing relationship and conversations with Sajid Javid. So, the first question really is, I suppose, Lisa, the bottom line is, if I fail in what I've set out to achieve, then the public will judge me, as will you, on that. And I'm sure you will judge me very hard, and the public would expect me to. What I've done is I've set out what I believe is necessary to transform this county from a county that is polarised in many ways, where people are living under extreme housing pressure in the south and high cost of living, and low ability to earn more money in the north because their connectivity is so appalling. So it's an agenda that I believe will make the county a fairer one to live in. Can I force business to do what I want business to do? Well, I'm not, I don't have a magic wand, but I do believe that business will invest in success. And I've had enough businesses contact me to make me believe, or investors make me believe that's true. So I believe that business will invest in success. And Fred mentioned Wisbech. There are developers in Wisbech who want to invest in the city of Wisbech. So if I can find a way to help them do that, then we'll do that. If I could, but you know, as I said, I'm going to the same old story. But unless I have a clearly costed business plan that the businesses can see where their money is going, then I'm not going to be able to gain that. So it is. I can't give you a clear answer, Lucy, because we're looking into the future and we're aiming high.
What's your the end of that was, what's your plan about taxation?
Okay, I have no plans to raise tax over this period of time, but of course, and I said so. But if health does come into the equation for this authority, if there is part of what we're looking at is restructure of local government in Cambridgeshire. Now, clearly, if this authority was to take on adult social care, for example, then it couldn't do so for nothing, and there would have to be tax-raising powers for doing that. At the moment, I have no plans to take on adult social care, or education, or health, or you know. But we are in the very early stages, halfway through my first 100 days. You would expect me to have these conversations with government, and if we bring forward new areas into the combined authority in the future that require taxation, that reform of local government has allowed for savings elsewhere, then I would have to look at it. At the moment, there are no plans to raise tax at any stage.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Hewlett.
Thank you, Chairman. North-south divide, the levels of deprivation in the north of the county, perhaps in the inner cities, in Cambridge and Peterborough and some areas of Huntingdon. It leads, as has been mentioned, with education to low aspirations in these areas. How are you going to look at deprivation? Can you give us a flavour of some of the... Well, what you think of the challenges and how you're going to approach all this?
I think I've been in this building for 8 years and district council for 10 years. I've seen schemes come and go where they've tried to solve the problem short term. And I don't think there's been any of those schemes that I would suggest have given a long-lasting success. And I mentioned many times through the campaign that this is a 30-year vision of what we want to achieve here. There is no need for anybody in this county to be living in deprivation because the wealth in this county is so huge and the opportunity is so massive that we should never have that situation. The areas that are deprived are certain inner city areas where there's not been enough care in education, as we've mentioned, and opportunities for people to go into the workplace, and in parts of Fenland where I very strongly believe that deprivation is born out of the poor connectivity of Fenland and the low wage, low attainment, a low aspiration that can affect certain people. So investment into what I hope will be the right schemes, the right connectivity, of course, and apprenticeship schemes, and into the education, and raising people's opportunities so they don't follow the previous generation into a life of deprivation, and giving them chances. That's how I believe that we can pull people up. Just throwing money at the problem short term has not worked in the past, and it's not worked under various colours of government over many years. So, I hope very much that what I want to achieve and the way I want to achieve it is the right way. But like all of these things, I can't click my fingers and solve deprivation in a 6-month period. No. But there has to be a plan for it. Yes. And it's absolutely key that we do that, because as a civilised society in the 21st century, in a very affluent part of the world, one of the most affluent places to live in the entire world, we can't allow deprivation to blight the people's lives that suffer from it.
Well done. Pleased to hear that.
Do we have a plan and floor targets?
Well, I've not set any. No, I haven't got any targets. But you can see what my plan is, Ed. I've gone through in detail how I think.
Sorry, Chair. Just for me, it'd be clearer if you would have floor targets that nobody would be in housing poverty, child poverty would be reduced. Those floor targets across the county over a 5-year period.
Okay. Well, I'll consider that as an option.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Councillor Carter, investment.
Yes, thank you, Chair. James, the shortest section on your 100-day commitments is the investment strategy. Could you just give us a flavour of how you see this working and what the targets are for raising additional finance and how you see it working?
Yeah, I think it will grow because at the moment, from what I've said, getting the investment in does depend on the success of the other schemes that I've launched in the first 100 days. And one of the things that's mentioned very clearly is the investment strategy, or the Cambridgeshire Investment Fund. So the Cambridgeshire and Peterborough Investment Fund was an idea that you put a certain amount of money, let's say £10 million, for example, into a fund which will aid housing developers to bring forward smaller housing developers to bring forward schemes by putting some money in up front for them, so they can afford to develop the sites. And now this is something that hopefully will speed up some housing development across the county. But also, to be honest with you, if I can be successful in my plan for a land cap across much of Cambridgeshire, that will do the same thing. As if builders are buying land for £100,000 an acre rather than 500 to £1 million, then their ability to get a housing site and develop it up and running is incredibly enhanced by not having to find that money up front before they start. So I'm trying to kickstart the housing economy a little bit more, but there will be further investment strategies clearly from what comes out of this first 100-day plan.
Have you got any targets on what you might want to try and raise through this?
Well, I don't know what I need yet. So, look, I mean, you can, it's very simple modelling. You can say, okay, well, a dual carriageway costs you £15 million a mile. But is that £15 million a mile on highland or fenland? Where do we, that's why we need these studies done. Light rail is cheaper than dual carriageway, but how many bridges, how many crossings, etc. So once these studies completed, we'll have some kind of idea of the money we need to raise.
And the investment fund, where's the money come from for that? Is that out of the housing pot? Is that,
Yeah.
Right, Councillor Over.
Thank you. I'm very keen on an overall strategy for education in the area. Councillor Murphy's exactly right. We do not, in Peterborough, have large numbers of people wandering around saying, I wish we had a university here. The interest is... Well, we haven't got a university in Peterborough. We have a number of outreach centres. We don't have people going around demanding university education to a large degree. We have people who have modest expectations and limited opportunities. And I would be interested to find out what your strategy would be, whether you're going to have any discussions with people involved in education in the city. In particular, we have a cabinet member for education who hasn't stepped foot in a state school. Her life has always been in private schools, even today she's governor of a private school. And a scrutiny chairman whose qualification for being in charge of education or scrutinising education is having a small training course for teachers. How are you going to get over that, and what are your plans for the strategy?
As you're fully aware, education is not part of the devolution deal, and nor is it part of the devolution deal at any of the combined authorities in the country. So the work that I will be able to do directly in schools is limited. Where I can get in is through apprenticeship schemes, clearly, but the work that I can do directly is limited. But what I can do is lobby government. And I'm happy to come. I mean, happy to come to Peterborough. Clearly, you have seen that as in my first 100-day plan is to meet with schools, colleges, and Ofsted to consider a flagship into apprenticeship policy. I would hope that I will have regular meetings with head teachers of schools across the county. If they see me as somebody who might be able to help them, that's great. I'm in a very fortunate position of having a line to government. And if I can cultivate a relationship with the education department or the departments around Cambridgeshire and Peterborough, then I will certainly do so. But as I said, I will have limited ability as a mayor because education isn't devolved at all.
Can I ask going back to the university and apprenticeship, has any research work been done in the last 20 years to try and discover what the likely demand is for a variety of apprenticeships and university courses. It was done about 20 years ago,
Right, okay.
but that disappeared into the ether. I'm just wondering if any other work has been done. Or
Well, specifically linked to Peterborough
the
University.
university and the apprenticeships, for instance. It's no
Okay.
good setting up apprenticeships if we don't need those skills in 20 years' time.
Yeah, I think, you know, my view for Peterborough University is that it should specialise in certain areas that are lacking in Peterborough. So one of the things I've said publicly is that I expect them to do a lot of work in teacher training and try and specialise in teacher training, because attainment of teachers in Peterborough is a problem. If you can train them locally, they're more likely to stay in the area. And there are other areas, you will know more than I do because you're from Peterborough, and clearly that would be the kind of advice I would expect you to go there. Just trying to repeat what other universities have done is not what's necessary. So, and clearly, as I say, if we're going to be investing in apprenticeships and heavily pushing apprenticeships, that might change the amount of people who want to go to a Peterborough University. But when it comes to your point about, you don't see people walking the street saying, oh, I wish there was a university here. Well, maybe that's not the case, but if you live in that band in the north of Cambridgeshire, and let's add parts of West Suffolk into that as well, and you can't afford to go away to university, and you haven't got the opportunity to do so in your home city, that's detrimental to people's, that's cutting off people's ability to have a chance in life before they even get one. So I think that there's been a lot of work done at Peterborough University. What I've read, I think there is a need. I've met people in the city who are currently studying at university, and the reasons why, you know, single mothers or people from poor backgrounds, or perhaps people who want to work themselves through university. I think that, you know, these people are just as important to society as everybody else, and they have to be included. And I think that, as I said, I think that cities with universities, particularly those based in the centre of the city, do offer a more vibrant economy. And I think that Peterborough's economy will grow through this university.
Can I have a supplementary on that? Can I just briefly?
Yeah, it's pretty
Have you considered, seeing as Anglia Ruskin have got a portfolio in Peterborough and now an established university, that the University of Peterborough might be money that would be provided to build that might make it part of the Anglia Ruskin chain?
Well, the problem from how it's...
I mustn't declare interest and in my Anglia Ruskin.
Okay, well, look, the way it's been explained to me is that the relationship with Anglia Ruskin has been positive, but it's also extremely restrictive. And the Peterborough, as a satellite of Anglia Ruskin, can only offer the courses that Anglia Ruskin allows it to offer. So if Peterborough wants to be independent, have an independent university, it has to have its own independent university to specialise in those areas that we mentioned. And I know that there's work going on in Anglia Ruskin to do more teacher training, and if there is, that means they won't do it at Peterborough, for example. So I think that clearly the relationship with Anglia Ruskin has been pretty positive, but they've also found it as restrictive as well. And it's that freedom that the people who are running the university want to allow them to specialise in what they feel is necessary for the people of Peterborough. That's the way I understand it.
And finally, Councillor Henry.
I've been told I'm the last one to ask you questions. James, can I first of all say I'm very envious of you. You said in 30 years' time you'll be 77. And you'll be able to see the result of all this. I should be 110. And I just feel that perhaps I'll be looking from up.
Well, people live forever now.
But two quick questions. One thing that does concern me is that at the moment there is a hidden cost which isn't being shown anywhere to all of our councils in their officers and indeed our chief execs are doing a great deal of work to make the combined authority achieve its aims. When do you see that drain disappearing, particularly in the use of our officers, because that has a knock-on effect to what we in turn can do in our own councils? Can you answer that?
Well, it's interesting you use the word drain, and I speak, you know, having been a district leader not very long ago, I took the view that the opportunity that was coming our way at East Cambs to improve, you know, things that we would never have been able to do as a district council was worth investing some of my chief executive's time. And I would hope that your councils would look at it from that way. So, for example, if you have, if you're at Peterborough and you're investing some officer time in working alongside the Combined Authority for apprenticeships, and it's raising the level of educational or opportunities for young people in Peterborough, then I think that that's not a drain at all. It's a huge opportunity that you're taking, and the ability of this authority, the Combined Authority, to bring extra funding into each of your districts is actually massive value, not a drain. However, what I will say is, whilst we will still utilise the exceptional talents of those around the county, there are areas that we will put our own specialists in. Now, I've been clear all the way along that I don't see this being a big authority. Manchester, I think, has currently got 1,000 staff. If I ever get 1,000 staff, I will allow you all to beat me with a stick whenever you want. I said during the election that I would have less than 20 staff, and I will absolutely keep to that. I see the Combined Authority as a delivery vehicle. Where we can, we will utilise the best brains around the county that are already working within the structure. If I don't feel that we have the right people at our disposal, we will go out to the market and use consultees and use the best consultees. And when we talk about the buses that I mentioned earlier, I don't expect to do that through, with all the greatest respect to all of our councils, through officers who work currently in the system. I expect to do that through using those consultees who are experts in the field, and that's exactly the same as across all of these people. And then when they're finished that work, then they will leave us and go on elsewhere. So it's light touch staff-wise from my point of view, but also utilising the councils that you have where we can.
And the last question, I promise. You mentioned almost in passing what you were expecting from this group around the table. Can you give us a clear idea of exactly what you expect from us, and how, if you like, painful at times the scrutiny might be, bearing in mind that actually we can, if we call in something, we can actually put a stop to the decision that you've made. How do you see that relationship, and how do you see our future relationship between you and your other members and us as a group?
Well, politics is as entrenched as you want to make it, I think. And if you take an entrenched position, then you'll find yourself probably up against it. Now, that's not really the way that I work. I think that if there is a scheme that we want to put forward that is highly beneficial, not just to one particular area, but has a knock-on effect across the county, then that's the kind of scheme that we should be looking at. In whatever area, that might be a road, it might be an educational thing, whatever, or it might be a housing scheme. I would like to see you as a committee that drives me, pushes me further, that says to me, I know you said you're going to do this, but what about if you really push it further? How far do your ambitions go? I would like you to challenge me to do more than I actually am.
Do you actually see us as a sounding board then?
I see you as a highly important cog in this combined authority machine. But I don't want... Overview and scrutiny has got a bit of a bad name in many ways, because what it can become is highly laborious, dull. It can become that. I've sat on overview and scrutiny before where I've wanted to pull my toenails out. But what it can be is a highly positive driver. And I think that you've got that opportunity to be that. And you can challenge me, you can drive me, you can come up with ideas that I haven't. I've not got a monopoly on ideas. And I see that you can really push this authority forward if you want to. Alternatively, of course, you could just hunker down and just nod your heads every 4 weeks, which I wouldn't expect you to do. So you've got a huge opportunity to be a driver in this new authority. And all of us sitting around this table, this is brand new. And it is what we want to make it.
May I give you one sentence of advice that will probably help us work a lot better with you? and that is to come up with a 5-year plan. Here is what I wish to achieve in my first session. Because the problem at the moment is that your plan is extraordinarily ambitious and very, very interesting, but it's very easy to get depressed about it. But a 5-year plan is something that we can use. Sorry?
4 years.
Yeah, it's a 4 years.
Oh, 4 years.
Let's make it 5. Let's make
We've got them to deflate their time.
No, I wonder why you suggested that.
All right, okay, thank you very much. I did no need to answer.
Okay.
So thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much.
It's been very interesting. There's an awful lot of balls in the air there. Let's hope you could pull off that trick. You know, will be for the benefit of everybody. So, yeah, thanks and
Thank you very much.
35 minutes on the
Yeah, that's right.
that's
Let's have a glass of water.
cheers, everybody.
Good luck with your plan.
Okay, thank you very much for that. Just to reflect on that for a minute, I mean, there's no great disaster. I mean, this is all nice things that I hope for in the future. They're all very nice, and we all hope they actually come to fruition. But my last comment there, I mean, my underlying concern would be that there's an awful lot of things going on. Very limited staff. Still don't understand how that's going to work. You know, at the moment, there's only one permanently employed person, and she's sitting next to me. And if you're going to actually deliver everything through consultancy, your £20 million isn't going to go very far.
Explain it on the side.
Equally, as we pointed out, we spent the 20 million a number of times over already. So I'm not sure there's something we can get our teeth into at this moment, unless you tell me differently. Yeah, all right, okay. But yeah, so go on then.
It's a bit sort of pink and fluffy, what we've been presenting with. Okay? That's not critical. There's thought going on and there's a dialogue going on. But a delivery vehicle needs a delivery plan. And that delivery plan needs to be costed. And I think it needs to be focused. You know, you can't really build that many houses and an underground system and this and that. So let's see if we can get a 1-year delivery plan out of a 5-year model. Look at influence funds. It's not really 20 million of the influence fund as well. But I would caution, as somebody who took over an NDC delivery plan in East London in 2000 with 700 million of influence funds, they had spent most of the first year's budget on consultants. And we turned it around and we had reserve projects. We did some delivery, you know, so I think you need to have a good ratio.
Yeah, he hasn't got anybody at the moment to do the delivery plan, has he?
Is it not a team? I mean, is it not somebody
Can
doing
I just say to Chair,
accounts?
Chair, I think one of the first things we need to really dig deep on is the model that the Mayor is proposing for the combined authority in terms of staffing. We have seen with the city deal this concept of the virtual organisation pulling on resources from other organisations, all of which are the component authorities of which we represent. And we all know that all staff in the component authorities are already overstretched. So, you know, they tend to do the work for the combined authority on a Friday afternoon at 4 o'clock because that's about the only time of the week when they have availability. And I think one of the fundamental things we need to consider is whether the Mayor's approach on having what I would call an asset-light, people-light organisation is the correct one. Because that does come to then the fundamental foundation for a delivery plan, so that the people in place, so that you can actually do the work under the control of the combined authority. And actually, I think as soon as we've appointed the chief executive, I think that's an area of scrutiny as well in relation to the staffing structure. And I'd like to propose that at one of the forthcoming meetings over the next 2 or 3 cycles.
Yep.
I'm sorry, that was really the point I was making.
Yeah.
Okay, well, that's noted. Of course, many of these things for the 100 days are actually coming to Wednesday's meeting, or whether that actually in itself means there's a plan somewhere.
Chair, let me just give you the illustration of the light rail. It's coming to Wednesday's meeting, there is no document, and as he's indicated, it's going back to the July meeting. So what we're seeing is this very long wish list that actually is just being rolled forward and forward. And at some point, the confidence not only of ourselves but the public in general will start to question the deliverability of the combined authority. And I think we have a duty to ensure that we highlight with the Mayor where we may disagree with him in terms of that approach. And the city deal is an important reference point because you will see over the last few months they're actually hiring a lot of people because they've realised that the last 2 years have been a waste of time because they've not been able to achieve anything.
Chair, can I just ask, when you refer to light rail, are you referring to the Whiz Beach?
No, I'm referring to the light rail in Cambridge and the underground.
These pictures are different
Where's the
altogether.
Whiz Beach one coming up then?
Well, that's in the transport documentation as well.
Because that you just need to bottom out whether you can have a level crossing and how much it will cost or not.
Yes, well, there's some research being done.
There's a long way to go on that.
There are.
That work's been done.
They have, there's
Well,
up
that's
to
what I'm
about
saying is-
grip 3 on that
You should
one.
do it.
There is some work that's already been
There's
done
been,
there.
been
If you
studies
look at the
done.
minutes, sorry, if you look at the agenda for Wednesday, there is a paper
There is.
on there.
Yeah. No, I'm talking about the light rail for Cambridge, where they
No, that's
feasibility
different.
studies start.
Which is very little.
That's mentioned
Well, that's fair enough.
you know.
That's mentioned in the local transport.
Well, it is fair enough, but it's not because basically the city deal is progressing very rapidly in terms of bus routes, and that completely contradicts the idea of light rail. So we're going to spend 160 million on bus routes, and then let's say the feasibility study concludes that light rail is a good idea. It's somewhat illogical.
It is illogical, you're right.
And the lack of joined up thinking.
Precisely.
We never really got into it.
Well, you need,
All right, come on, one at a time, one at a time. Councillor Nessing,
One of the things that I think we ought, as a scrutiny committee, to be looking into sometime in the next 6 months, ideally, is what the Mayor's plans for public sector reform are and how he's proposing that we manage the current completely ludicrous structure for local government in Cambridgeshire. Because there is a real problem with the county council and the city deal and the Mayor all commissioning consultants to do pieces of work which are actually in different directions and heading in different directions. And we could see an absolutely catastrophic waste of money on vast numbers of feasibility studies which contradict each other. So I just think that, and the Mayor is the portfolio holder for public sector, public service reform, for which I think is
I've seen a remit for that, have you?
hidden speak for unitary authorities and changing the structure of local government. But I would like to know whether that is what it means, and I think we ought to find out.
Okay.
so we don't need to get too closely involved with the city deal, do we? That's a separate thing altogether, surely.
It can't really be separate because it's
No,
got
but we
context.
What's what we're doing,
an overall picture.
We need to, overall, yes.
But just an observation on that, but there is not a virtual fence around the geography of the city deal and combined authority in relation to transportation. The Mayor has to deliver a strategic plan for transportation for the whole area, which includes the city deal. So you can't have this, dancing around each other. It has to be integrated in a way, otherwise we're failing to do our duties as a scrutiny committee on the combined authority. That's my point.
I don't disagree with that, but I don't want to get too much emphasis on the cities, whether it's Peterborough or Cambridgeshire. It's a Cambridgeshire and Peterborough combined authority, which includes rural areas as well, and market towns. So I just want to be careful on that.
A fair point. We need to concentrate. We need to remember that there are rural areas.
And market towns.
I think the point there is quite clear that there. I think the Mayor's office is probably sovereign on transportation. Actually, Transport for London are now allowed to operate in East Anglia if they want to under the law, so it gets even more complicated. But I think we do need an integrated transport plan, an integrated housing strategy for Cambridgeshire and Peterborough, and it's this body that's going to run with that one in partnership, possibly with the others. Now, the assumption is because you've got the leaders of the councils on it, I don't know who leads the city deal. There you go. So you have got the leaders on the combined authority, so they should be able to sort it out if we collaborate. No,
That's
they
where
should be able to.
yes.
And if there's a will,
We'll begin to
we'll
look
get
at
there.
different.
Yeah.
And I suppose the last thing, when we're scrutinising, we should be looking at strategy, and have they got the strategy in place where you will see this, and that goes across the whole of the area.
There we go.
Okay, we've taken all that on board then.
Can I just throw in, we're talking about Cambridgeshire, which is not Cambridge, which is not Peterborough. It includes Cambridge and Peterborough. We're looking for an area that's neither of those. And we suffer from that. We don't have transport, we don't have this, we don't have the other. And so these areas need to be represented. So we need an overview strategy, but let's not forget the rest of the area.
Okay, fine.
Can I just
Now,
pick
now
that?
we're not continuing on that.
Well, I just wondered, the point I was making was absolutely to do with your area, actually, because I had a meeting with a county council officer earlier this week about the A10 to Ely and beyond. There are 3 pieces of work being done at the moment by 3 different organisations, all of which relate to that road. And that's the problem, that's the issue that we're dealing with. It's not a Cambridge problem, it's a Cambridgeshire and Peterborough problem, and it is a problem.
All right. Okay. We're not going to solve that problem this morning.
Chair, can I
avoid duplication if they can say.
Yeah, that's fair
I
comment.
thought we already done that.
No, we haven't.
Not in the meeting.
All right, but hang on, we've got an agenda to get through here.
just want to make sure you didn't
That's it.
Don't worry, there'll be an opportunity. All right, well, I'm sure we won't be too long on the rest of it anyway. So I'm sure everybody has read diligently the 225 pages of the Combined Authorities agenda for Wednesday.
You said some, the 272.
Well, perhaps I've lost some.
We were hoping you'd give us the executive summary.
I think. All right, this item is simply, have you actually noticed something there that is something that we ought to be really on top of? I mean, it's essentially the 100 days and starting various things. So, I mean,
What does concern me is this rephasing that's already started in terms of funding. That really does concern me, because if we are saying that actually, so for example, in the housing budget, it looks as though they're rephasing 15 million from 17-18 into the back end of the period. Now,
is that the city's money or the general?
It's both.
Oh.
It's both, as I understand it. And that does concern me, because actually it undermines the authority's ability to plan. So we've already had one set of plans that were presented to the Shadow Authority and then again in May in terms of the programme for housing. And I understand what the Mayor said in terms that he believes the government will deliver. But that does worry me, that even the commitment on that money is being rephased. So I do think we should probe a little further, because that is very worrying in terms of if they're going to back end all that money, that will frustrate delivery on the ground.
All right, we'll put that on the list. Yes?
Yeah, this first 100-day commitment, is it? Sorry, I'm on a phone here. It needs to say who's going to do what by when. It doesn't know any of them. So first one, commission business case for the Julian off the A47 upgrading A10. When is that going to be commissioned, and who's going to be responsible for it? Is it going to be the chief executive? Is it going to be the mayor? Is it going to be somebody from one of the authorities? That needs to be in as many of these as possible, and maybe reduce the number. Hold a future of transport conference to start and develop a local regional vision. There's a few things in there. Well, you really should set a date. You know, you're going to have this conference, if you're going to have it by Christmas or whatever.
Yep.
So I think the activity needs to have a date, and it also needs to identify who's going to lead on it and who the partners are.
Yep. Well, hopefully that's what's meant to come out of Wednesday's meeting.
Exactly. Yeah, I think you'll find that that commission is actually in there.
Fine. Yeah.
Okay.
Yes, if you look at page 90.
It's there already. Cool.
Okay. Anything else on that one?
I don't think it is.
Right. Everyone's welcome to come to Wednesday's meeting if they like to, of course. And if
Can I
you
just-
can't be there, I'll be there. Yeah. So these counts. And you can't park there, as you might be aware.
The car parks are free.
Well, yeah.
Right, the good news is the car park's free.
You have to walk.
All right, anything else on this one? No? Right, moving on then, combined authority forward plan. Right, we've seen the forward plan, so we've got this Wednesday, then the next one is... And then the next one is September. So the 100 days will be fully delivered by then, of course, since that's mid-August. Right, any comments on any of that? No, we've got our own forward plan. That's page 28. Now, this is fairly basic at the moment. As you know, we're going through the process of getting the cabinet members before us. This was 2 at the time. And the next meeting is the 24th of July.
Yeah, so we cross out strategic planning and put in transport.
Strategic plan is out, that's gone to September, I think, was it?
Yes, strategic planning's gone to September, fiscal's gone to November, and our July meeting will have housing and transport.
Right.
Chairman, at that meeting, would you like to also take the opportunity to have a look at their local transport plan that's going to do this on Wednesdays?
Yes, yeah, indeed. Well, we have papers from that from Wednesday, won't we?
Yeah, so you've got the two together. You've got both the portfolio holder
So
and...
we'll have those circulated. Okay. Any other comments on that? Yes, please.
When we have the local transport plan, if we have that at the July meeting, which I think is a really good idea, would it be possible to have one of the officers responsible for it as well as the portfolio holder? And I know you want to test that the portfolio holder knows the answers, but frankly I wouldn't expect the portfolio holder to be able to answer
Not all the detail
on the whole
on
plan.
that,
And I do think if we're going to scrutinise it properly, it would be sensible
Yeah.
to
You
have
probably need one from Cambridge and one from Peterborough.
quite a-
Yeah.
That's all it is, it's just gone like that.
Left out a few
Well, it's the left out the big chunk that I'm interested in.
Okay. So we're all happy with that?
Could I ask when the mayor is rescheduled to appear again? Is that in the plan at all? Yes,
Well, it isn't at the moment. I'd imagine it was probably
Present.
well, yeah, almost.
it's
Yeah.
when we wanted, isn't it?
Well, I think we should keep tabs on it, obviously.
Every quarter. Every quarter.
Yeah, I'm going to say something like that.
Like
Yeah.
that.
Well, let's get through the cabinet, because I mean there's more detail involved there,
Okay.
or hopefully there is, about what they're actually doing. And let's see what we get out of those. I mean, you know, he is there to be called when we want him to be.
Yeah, but I think he should be seen regularly.
Yeah.
So don't leave it longer than 6 months if you don't think. Quarterly sounds right to me.
Friends.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, right,
You know, I was critical of the 100-day thing, but at least he's brave enough to put a load of things
Yes.
down.
Yeah.
yeah, that's right. You support it as well.
And he wants us to.
That's his commission.
All right. So we need to get that into
Yeah.
It's a priority.
the overall strategy there. So
We only have the chief exec once a year, don't we?
I would, let's say 6 months to begin with, because I mean.
Yeah, because then we've gone through everything with portfolios then, yeah.
And from our own point of view, we would have a much better hold on how we're actually doing our own business. Okay, good. Councillor Barry, do you want to...
Yeah, I'd like to think that future meetings of this committee will allow public questions and think that we should consider how we might do that.
Yeah, we'll certainly take it. Well, I'm sure we're all perfectly happy to take public questions.
Yeah.
Yep.
And public participation in terms of petitions and so forth.
Well, yeah, okay, with care.
Petitions to scrutiny?
I think the
Yeah, what should we do now? No.
Whilst I
like the idea and think it's
taking
good to
time.
be transparent to allow public questions. We also need to make sure that as a scrutiny committee we can have participation from people that can bring something added to it as well. Not something
Who we
don't.
choose.
For example, a transport expert or a minister of transport, or that sort of thing. Because we're effectively a select committee looking at the issue. So I think we
But
need-
that's additional too.
Yeah, that would be.
Yeah.
I'm just saying, don't lose that role.
But that's an invitee though, isn't it? Who would invite a specialist
Yeah,
to come along?
I've not heard anybody
I mean, we're open for
mention
people to
that.
ask
No, it's a good
questions
idea.
of us.
Rather than 2
Us
hours of
go,
questions
just
from the
something
public.
that
We don't want too
we're
long
not
with the
actually here
public.
to solve it.
Hopefully Mr Taylor will confine his questions to a reasonable number.
Right, okay, so I think public questions.
Public forum, 15 minutes.
As I
Yeah.
said before, and I'll say it in this meeting, so it gets minuted, I think it should be limited to 20 minutes total.
At the most.
Yeah.
And
At the
if
most.
there's several people, then
You
the
can't
chair
stop.
should say you've got only a few minutes for this, so everybody gets a chance.
And it's a forum rather than a question and answer.
Do we want it in advance? So that
I
we
think
can prepare.
I think
It's
that
much better if we have this.
it's in advance, it enables a proper answer to be provided basically, but on a realistic basis, not 3 days or whatever.
You leave the judgment of the brilliant chairman to decide whether.
Chair, could I just ask the monitoring officer whether or not there is a mechanism for combined authority regarding petitions and on what basis? Because within the city, there is a clear governance structure
There is for the
petitions
board,
for scrutiny.
certainly, yeah.
Yes.
Sorry.
I think the best thing to do is clearly that you've showed a lot of interest in the way that the public questioning works and the also the petitions, not just here but in the Combined Authority Board. Shall I circulate a note following this meeting, and I'll undertake to do so by the end of the week, which will explain to you exactly what currently exists and then what also would be permissible under the rules, so that if you wanted to bring it back as an item, to have a protocol, develop a protocol about how you would like to bring that transparency agenda further forward, then I'm happy to do so.
Okay. Good, okay, happy with that? So the next meeting then is the 24th, and that is where?
Peterborough City Council.
Peterborough.
Where is it? Next meeting? Peterborough. Where's that? No
Sadly, I won't be with you on the 24th.
Oh.
Being away on holiday. So you'll be in the capable hands of Councillor Hay.
There's no parking at Peterborough.
You're not away, I think. All right, well, thank you very much, everybody. And see you on Wednesday, possibly.
Yeah. Pig theatre, back in the
I'll go on the train.